started? Okay. Thank you. You were here. So then you actually, since this T epsilon, T sigma are 3 by 3 matrix, you can actually open each of them and derive terms for the compliance in the different terms of the compliance tensor. So SSS actually comes out to be m to the power 4 S11 plus m square n square 2 S12 plus S6 plus dot 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 so on and so forth. So these terms are actually not very difficult to derive. If you look carefully, each of these terms depend on fourth order of some trigonometric expression. So it depends on either sine theta or cos theta, and it is to the power 4. This to the power 4 is coming because the strain transformation tensor is square in terms of some direction cosine. T sigma is also square of some, has square terms of some direction cosine. If you multiply, you get some fourth order. Now look carefully. What is this term S X S? This is this term. This term was 0 for orthotropic material. Yes. But now we are seeing orthotropic material at some coordinate axis system. These terms might or might not be 0. So we will discuss this in more detail in the next few minutes. Similarly, you can also transform the Q matrix by writing the Hooke's law in terms of stress and strain, doing the same thing that we have done previously, and we get the values for Qx, x, Qxy, dot, dot, dot. Once again, Qx, s, Qy, s are not 0. For orthotropic materials, it was 0, and same orthotropic material in some other coordinate axis system, this is not 0. So based on this, we can actually refine our definition of orthotropic materials. We'll say that orthotropic materials have 3 planes of symmetry in any one coordinate axis system. So it is possible that in one coordinate axis system, Q, X, S, Q, Y, S is 0. In other coordinate axis system, it is not 0, but we will still call the material orthotropic. So a material is orthotropic if there is at least one coordinate axis system where the shear strain and normal stress coupling parts are 0. It need not be 0 for all coordinate axis system. There will be only one or at least one coordinate axis system where it is 0. Okay, is this clear? For all coordinate axis system, these terms will not be 0. Clear or not clear?
Clear, sir.
Yes, sir. Yes.
So now we have the concept of what is known as shear coupling. In the principal material coordinate axis system, which is 1, 2, 3, components of normal and shear stress are uncoupled. Thus, a normal stress only produces normal strains and vice versa. So let us go back a few slides to see what I am talking about. If you look at this equation, strain in the one direction is only a function of stress in the normal direction. So epsilon 1 is a function of sigma 1, sigma 2. It is not a function of sigma 6 because this term is 0. This term is 0 in the principal coordinate axis system. So epsilon 1 is only a function of sigma 1, sigma 2. Correct? Similarly, strain, this is the shear strain term, is only a function of this because these terms are 0. It means that the normal and the shear stresses and strains are independent of each other. Okay. This is true for all orthotropic materials. Isotropic materials also you have learned this, that the normal and shear stresses and strains are independent of each other. But if you take a orthotropic material, rotate it to some other coordinate axis system, then this coupling will happen. These terms which I have put in the red and blue circles need not be zero. So what happens during that? Let us see. So in the principal material coordinate axis system, components of normal and shear stresses are uncoupled. I think this is clear now. A normal stress produces normal strain and shear stress produces shear strain only. However, if you rotate your coordinate axis system, normal and shear terms are uncoupled, which means that these terms are not zero. So sigma x now is a function of epsilon x, epsilon y, also a function of 2 epsilon xy, because this term is not zero, which was true for orthotropic materials in a certain coordinate axis system. Similarly, this sigma xy is a function of all three of them because this is not zero. This is not zero. My Q matrix is still symmetric, but this QXS terms are not zero. So what does that lead to? That leads to what is known as shear coupling. Shear coupling means you are applying a normal stress, but you are getting shear strain. This phenomena is known as shear coupling. And the 1,6 terms or the 2,6 terms or XS terms are the shear coupling coefficients. If they are non-zero, then normal applied stress causes a shear strain. Okay. Now consider a stress field such that sigma x is sigma applied, rest all are zero. This will produce a shear strain gamma xy is equal to S16 into sigma applied. So this is your normal stress producing a shear strain. Now you look at this expression for sigma 16 S16, it will come out to be something like this. Bar means it is a new coordinate axis system. Okay, so 16. So this is 1 bar 6 bar coordinate axis system, or SXS is equal to this. Now look at this carefully. When is S bar 16 equal to 0? So actually S bar 16 is equal to different books use different notations. So when is this equal to 0? Anybody, when is this equal to 0? When is this term going to be equal to 0? This term.
M is equal
At
to 1
zero.
and N is equal to 0.
One of M or N have to be 0. When is either M or N is equal to 0? If I rotate it by 0 degree or 90 degree. If I rotate it by 0 degree means I make no rotation, M is 0. If I rotate it by 90 degree, N is 0. So that means for an angle 0 and 90 degree, there is no shear coupling. For any other coordinate axis system, for if you are laminized at any other angle other than 0 or 90, you are going to get this shear coupling. Okay. So now, just like the Poisson's ratio has been defined, nu12 is equal to the S12 divided by S11. Similarly, now we define a new constant, material constant, which is known as the shear coupling ratio. Eta 16 is equal to compliance 16 term divided by compliance 11 term. Or in other words, this is the shear strain that a body will suffer divided by the normal strain that it suffers when subjected to uniaxial loading. If a body is subjected to uniaxial loading, it is going to get some strain in the applied load direction. But because there is some shear coupling, it is also going to get some shear strain. The ratio of the shear strain and the normal strain is known as your shear coupling ratio. This is defined in the same way as your Poisson's ratio or nu is defined. Only difference is that negative sign is not here. Okay. This is something new that you are learning, I believe. Is this clear?
Yes, sir.
You had learned this in your applied elasticity or advanced mechanics of solid so far or not?
No, sir.
No, sir. No, sir.
Okay, never mind. So this shear coupling ratio is going to be very important while designing composite materials. Normally, you don't want such shears. This, if you have two layers, one on top of the other, and both of them are getting shear strain in different directions, the tendency of them to come apart will increase. So while defining ply layups, this is something that is going to be important. Okay. Similarly, you will have nu to 6 also, which is defined as S to 6 divided by S2 or gamma xy divided by strain in the y direction when sigma applied is equal to sigma y. Okay, so this is a graphical illustration. If I have an isotropic material and if I pull it in the one direction, this dotted line becomes this solid line, or this dotted line becomes this solid line if I apply pure shear. So this rectangle remains rectangle if I have applied a normal load. This square becomes a rhombus if I apply shear, but the net area remains the same. However, now if my orthotropic material was orthotropic in this 1-2 plane, but I'm applying a normal stress in this direction, then this square is going to become like shown in the figure. The solid line is your final shape. Similarly, if shear is applied, both the size and the shape are going to change for general orthotropic and anisotropic materials. So this dotted line was my initial body shape. It is orthotropic in the 1-2 direction. Uniaxial load is applied in some direction which is not parallel to 1 and 2. So even if I am applying normal stress, my body, which was a square to start with, can become like a parallelepiped. And similarly, if I am applying shear stresses in some axis which is not parallel or perpendicular to my orthotropic axis, both the size and the shape is going to change. So far you have learned in your mechanics of solids that if you apply shear stresses, only the shape changes, the size does not change. That is only true for orthotropic material and the loading applied in the principal orthotropic directions. Since you mostly dealt with isotropic materials so far, this was correct to say. However, now that we are dealing with orthotropic materials and the loading need not be in the direction of orthotropy, then shear stress can also cause change in shape and change in size. Okay. This is a very important concept, so please make sure you understand it well. Clear, shear coupling is clear. What are the coefficient of shear coupling coefficients? Everything is clear that we have discussed in the last 10 minutes or so. This, how eta 16 is defined, how eta 26 is defined, why this term is coming.
Yes, sir.
And this is how your shear coupling as a function of theta is going to vary. Okay, so this is shear coupling eta xy. This is your theoretical change in value. Where what is Lg by W? I think this is some ratio of your modulus. So depending on the modulus ratios, it is going to change like this. So at 0 degree, it is 0, 90 degree, it is tending to 0. It sometimes reaches a peak at about 12 to 13 degrees, depending on your E1 by E2 ratio. So this is also one reason why we try to avoid laminas at 10, 12 degrees. It is better to take 75 degrees or 5, 10 degrees or 45 degrees. Never, it is rare to use some lamina in this range, 10 to 20 degrees. And also look at this, that the shear coupling ratio can be greater than 1, can be greater than -1. Unlike Poisson's ratio, which had certain limits. Okay, now we know how to calculate the compliance matrix. We know how to express the compliance matrix in terms of engineering constants and vice versa. So if we go to our transformation of the compliance tensor, the different terms, we can also then derive the directional dependence for engineering constants. Basically, what we have done is this. We went to this, but I know that S11 is 1 by E11, S12 is 1 by G12 dot dot dot, and SXX is 1 by EX. So based on this, we can derive the expressions for directional dependence of apparent engineering constants. Apparent or equivalent engineering constants, we can calculate the dependence. So it means that E1, G12, E2, let us say you calculated by rule of mixtures for a material in the principal coordinate axis system or the coordinate axis system defined by the fiber direction. Using these formulas, then you can calculate the different engineering constants, including the shear coupling coefficient at different directions, where M, N are the direction cosines. Okay. And this is what it is going to look like. Your engineering constants as a function of the loading ratio for glass epoxy looks like this. So E11 is maximum for 0 degrees and then it decreases. Okay, so all of these are normalized quantities. So if it is EX by E2 will start and then it starts to decrease all the way up to 1. Similarly, shear increases till 45 degrees and then it decreases to the same value. Shear coupling coefficient increases till about 15-17 degrees depending on what the for which material it is, glass epoxy or carbon epoxy, and then it tends to 0. And the Poisson's ratio also increases up to a certain limit and then it starts decreasing. So this chart is very interesting in the sense that look at this chart and tell me that suppose you know that a composite lamina is going to be subjected to only shear strains. So what layup are you going to suggest? If my body is subjected to shear strains, only I want the shear deformation to be the lowest, so I want the shear modulus to be the highest. So what layup should I use? What should be the angle at which I must cut my lamina?
45 degrees, sir.
Correct. So you use it there for 45 degrees. Okay. Another interesting observation that you make is that EX by E2 is this line. EY by E2 is going to be mirror image of this. It should go like this. And because EX and EY are 90 degrees to each other, so EX for 0 degree is EY at 90 degree. So on and so forth. So now, based on this, remember we had done one calculation where we said that the modulus was not enough. So what should we do? We had, in one numerical problem, we had tried two different things. The first is let us increase the fiber content. Second was let us increase the modulus of the matrix. Now look at this chart. Can you think of a third strategy? I want to increase E2. Okay, two options that we have studied so far was increase fiber content, increase the modulus of the matrix. Now look at this chart and look at the concepts that we have studied today. Is there a third alternative that is coming up? What can you say about E Young's modulus in the two direction if you have rotated your ply by, let us say, 30 degrees? If this is 1 at 30 degrees, how much it is? Is it more than 1? Look at where the marker is.
Yes, sir.
So can we do this? So is this also a viable strategy to increase the modulus in the transverse direction? We can increase the fiber content, we can improve the modulus of the matrix. But how about using lamina slightly off ply? So let us go to this formula. Can you calculate 1 by EY? Let us say E1 is 1, E1 is 10, E2 is 1. What is EY for 30 degrees? E1 is 1, E1 is 10, E2 is 1, and I am rotating it by 30 degrees. So what is the value of EY? Anybody? What is n to the power 4? N is equal to half, is it? For 30 degrees? 1 by 16. M is root 3 by 2. You also need G1, 2 and 2, no 1, 2. Okay, but so after this class today, please go back to that question that we have solved, and then you try to see how much is the value increase. You will see that this is a much more effective way of increasing the modulus in the transverse direction as compared to the modulus increase by increasing fiber content and matrix content. Another big advantage of this is that if you are only cutting lamina at an off ply, you don't need the help of material supplier. With the material that you already have, you just cut it at some other direction. If you want for some other matrix or some other fiber content, you have to actually buy new material or supply new material. And for that, you might have to do more tests. So usually to increase the modulus in the two direction, there are many approaches. For example, increasing the fiber content, increasing the modulus of the matrix, or cutting the lamina slightly off ply. The third option is the most preferred. Okay. But today after the class, please try to put some typical values of G12, Nu12, and also look at the data that was given in the sample problem in a few weeks ago and try to see what is the value of 1 by EY for 30 degrees. Okay, and comparison with experiments comes out to be rather nice. So these simple mathematics that we have done gives you very good match. If you can see these markers, they are matching very well with experimental data. The Poisson's ratio, not so much, but Poisson's ratio is very hard to measure because the deflection in the transverse to loading direction is very small and you need to have very precise measurements to measure it accurately. So error in the Poisson's ratio is probably in the test also where it's difficult to measure, but Young's modulus in the one direction relatively easy to measure and you see very good match with experiments. Okay. So is this clear? Most important, I think, is to understand this chart. Is this chart clear?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay. Now, in one last topic for today is that in structural mechanics, we have learned that shear does not matter. We said that shear is said to be positive if the direction of shear is like this, like I have shown in this figure. And shear is negative if it is like this. But we have said that both of them are actually same. When I am dealing with isotropic materials, we said that it doesn't matter negative or positive shear. Actually, there is no concept of negative shear at all. Now the question is for us in the concept of composite materials, is this true? Let us try to see. Now imagine that you have a composite material. This red line is showing you the fiber direction. Okay. So I have this, all my fibers are aligned like in as parallel to this red line. This body is subjected to positive shear. Now let us rotate my coordinate axis system by 45 degrees. So what do I see? I see that my fibers are subjected to tensile and perpendicular to the fiber is normal. Okay. Now let us look at the second case. Again, the fiber direction is the same, but the shear is negative. And if I rotate it by 45 degrees, now I'm seeing that my fiber is subjected to tensile stress and transverse to fiber is subjected to compressive stress. Based on what we have learned so far, are both of these cases same? Can I say
No,
that both of them can be treated in the same manner?
No, sir.
They cannot be treated in the same manner because we have learned about how damage progresses. If a fiber is subjected to, if a composite material is subjected to compression in the fiber direction, the state of the mode of damage is completely different as compared to when the fiber is subjected to, fiber direction is subjected to tensile load. So in the context of composite materials, we have to also to be careful about positive shear and negative shear. They are not necessarily the same, because the strength in tension and compression are not the same for loading in the fiber direction. This is also another big change from what we have already learned in your mechanics of solids. Fiber in tension, fiber in compression. So our conclusion is that for UD lamina, negative and positive shear are not same. I think always keep in mind that all the mechanics of solids that you learned in your undergrad, every time we have made the assumption that our material is isotropic. Now, when you come to composite materials, they are no longer isotropic. So a lot of things that you learned there actually are not true for orthotropic materials. They are true for isotropic materials. So you have to be a little bit careful. This is one example, positive and negative shear. We assume it to be same, but it is not same for orthotropic materials. Okay, so now let us look at a very simple problem and let us try to see how we can, it is some sort of a summary of what we have studied so far. Imagine that you have given the fiber properties parallel to the fiber, the property in the fiber direction, EF fiber direction is 71 gigapascal. In the transverse to fiber is also 71. So my fiber is most likely glass, which is isotropic. Nu12 is 0.5. The shear modulus is 28.50 gigapascal. Matrix property is also isotropic, 3.1, 0.2, 1.29. Now, using rule of mixtures, you can calculate the fiber properties in the one direction or in the fiber direction. In the 1-2 coordinate axis system, you calculate the effective properties using the rule of mixtures that we have discussed. How will you calculate it for some other coordinate axis system? So for that, one of the processes is that if you don't like to learn formulas, so you will calculate the properties in the 1-2 direction, derive the compliance matrix, which comes out to be like this, straightforward. Invert it, get the Q matrix, and then do the tensor transformation multiplication to get the 90 degrees. And then you can calculate the compliance in the 90 degrees, and then you can get the fiber properties, the properties of the lamina in the new coordinate axis system. So here I have done this to show that 0 and 90, EX and EYY are just flipped when I turn it to 90 degrees, which is kind of expected, but this is one way of doing it. So I mean, let's go back few slides. You can directly use these formulas. So you know the value of M, you know the value of N. Suppose you know E1, G12, Nu12, E1 by using rule of mixtures. You directly apply the formulas, get the engineering constants in different coordinate axis system, or you do it step by step like this. This approach becomes attractive because this Q matrix in the orientation is going to be an important quantity for us when we do a stress analysis at the mesoscale level. So when we try to do it, when we try to implement something on top of our micromechanics, then the process is that using the rule of mixtures, you will calculate the compliance matrix. From the compliance matrix, you calculate the apparent stiffness matrix or the approximate stiffness matrix. Then you do the orientation transformation. And this quantity is usually very important to us. Okay. Now, this leads me to our term project second part. So all of you have written the subroutines to calculate the properties based on the rule of mixtures. Now, on top of that, write another subroutine to calculate the S and Q matrix. So using your rule of mixtures, you have got the value of E1. So using your rule of mixtures, you have got this table. Okay, so this is done. This we have already done, I'm assuming. Now, based on this, write a code to write this matrix. Okay, and then inverse it to get this matrix. So this is your second or third. You can break it into two subroutines or you can write it in one subroutine. But the output is going to be that you are based on the properties that you have calculated in the rule of mixtures. You should be able to extract the S and Q matrix for the 0 degree orientation. Okay. Then write another subroutine, the third one, to calculate the modulus and other elastic properties at any angle. So the input is either the Q matrix or the S matrix, and the output is Q matrix and E nu at any angle theta. Okay, is this clear? Is your two? So this is going to be, I think, subroutine number 2, subroutine number 3. Is this clear?
Yes, sir.
And be careful
Yes.
that it might be so that, or it is going to be so that the subroutine number 1 will have to be executed once, but subroutine number 2 and 3 might have to be done several times. Matlab ki it is possible that you have to draw these plots. Or in fact, you should write the code and try to draw this plot yourself. Basically, this is nothing but the value of the different elastic engineering constants for different angles of theta. If your code is running well, you should be able to make plots like this. Okay. So I think we can stop here. Any questions for today? Anybody, any questions? So term project is clear. Problem statement, what we are trying to do next.
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Okay, then if there are no more questions, I think we can stop here. I will upload the update. So I will remove the presentation that I had put last week and I will add the slides that I have used today. I will do it by today afternoon. Okay. And
Sir,
Monday, yes.
So we need to make two separate programs for means in
No,
term project.
separate programs. Think in terms of subroutines. Ultimately, it is going to be one program which will do many things, which will do the complete micro and mesomechanics of composite materials.
Okay, sir. Okay.
Because I mean, clearly, so far we have not done any design. I mean, even if you know the modulus at different directions, so what? How does it helping you design a composite material? Correct. So that part will also come. I am expecting only one code which will be able to execute everything. Okay, and if you are able to make it in a GUI format, then there are bonus points to be had. GUI format means that so far how have you guys planned? Anybody can tell me how have you planned? How is your code taking the input? It is reading from a text file or it pops up and you have to manually put it, or is there a GUI? What have different people tried?
So it takes input from a command window.
Text input from command window. Anybody has tried text input from a text file. Like .txt file is saved, all the data is there and it reads from there. That might be nice actually. If you are able to execute it, I'm sure you will be able to do it with some reading. That might be nice because the number of inputs that you have to input might start to add up very quickly. And then your code, if you start manually putting, there is source of error. There is also possibility of it being tedious, that the input of the adding the input is taking more time than running of the code. So think about that also, that if everything is put in a text file in any format that you like, that you can specify first put this value, second put this value, third put this value, but a .txt file is made and your code is reading that .txt file, all the data that it needs, it reads all at once. In any case, even if you want your data input through command file, all the input should happen at once. It cannot be that you ask input once and then your code is running, one or two subroutines are running, and then again it is asking for input. That is very bad practice. A third possibility is if somebody can make a small GUI, where as soon as you run a code, some sort of graphic interface appears where we need to fill in the values and then run it, and then your code runs. That is very easy in MATLAB, I think. Has anybody tried that in MATLAB at some time?
Yes, sir.
It utna difficult nahi hai. I have tried that in Excel and it worked very easily for me. Very easy. So please think also in terms of this. Try to make a professional code. That much I can tell you. Okay, good. Anything else? Any other questions from your side, or we can close this class? Okay, so if there are no more questions, then I'm closing this class. We will see each other on Monday. Monday, we will have some more discussion on the recap of solid mechanics. More importantly, we will try to understand how does my stiffness and compliance of a matrix change if it is subjected to an environment where there is moisture, or if the temperature is very high or very low, what happens to my composite material. All these are building blocks as we go towards mesomechanics of composite materials. Okay, so Monday most likely we will complete our recap of solid mechanics, and then okay, so we see each other on Monday, and Tuesday the 9th of February is our first mechanics of composites test. Okay, and it is going to be 10 to 12, so no extra time, nothing. It is going to be, so don't worry about time clash or anything. And on that day we also have Viva for 14 people. I will take out the list soon. Okay, good. Then have a good weekend. Stay safe. See you on Monday. Bye.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.